happened since I last saw you? I lost my hammer, like yesterday, so that's still pretty fresh.
After Ragnarok, I'm sure many of you are loving Thor. And you should, he's a great character and also one of my favorites. In his third outing, Thor has shifted from medieval fantasy to a more comedic space adventure. I could be in the minority, but I love the fantasy aspects of the Thor movies and wish that they succeeded on that front. Ragnarok, though, is an amazing alternative, filled to the brim with comic lore and an homage to the 80s. Thor is on a mission to stop Ragnarok from happening, which is the end of the world, as well as Rebirth. But Marvel seems to left that part out. Perhaps to raise the stakes, but even that sort of fell flat. But we will get to that in a bit. After believing he has stopped Ragnarok, Thor returns home to Asgard, and if you remember from the Dark World, Loki is now the ruler, however disguised as Odin. The chemistry between Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston have always been a highlight for the Thor films, and continues to do so here. But to have Anthony Hopkins channel his inner Loki was a real blast to see. It is also here that we are treated to some nice Easter eggs, such as the time that Loki turned Thor into a frog in the Mighty Thor issue 364. And as clever as Loki is, Thor sees through the disguise. But having a statue erected and a play about Loki's quote-unquote noble sacrifice could also be giveaways, seeing as how Odin wasn't there to witness those events. The film has a really fast pace, which usually it's not a problem, but the downside here is that we don't get to spend as much time with characters that we want as we should, such as Odin, only having brief appearances before we never get to see them again. Also, as quickly as Thor arrives on Asgard, he quickly moves to Midgard, or Earth for you newbies. It's on Earth that Thor and Loki meet Doctor Strange, and it's always fun to see these Asgardian gods in civilian clothing, with Thor a more casual approach, while Loki an all-black suit, kind of a sense of how they see themselves as well. Thor's civilian disguise is another nod to the comics. Early in the comics, Thor had a human disguise known as Donald Blake, who would always carry around an umbrella or a cane with him. The umbrella or cane was just a disguise for the hammer Mjolnir. As a comic reader, it's always fun to see when they acknowledge stuff like this. Superhero cameos can or cannot work. Sometimes they just force it in there to be like, hey look, they're in the same universe, you know, kind of thing. But here with Doctor Strange, it really worked. He is the Sorcerer Supreme, so he has to protect Earth from all mystical threats. So having a god like Odin on Earth? That's a big mystical threat, so it makes sense here that he has to help Thor and Loki find Odin. Odin is found in Norway, living in the peaceful countryside. But here it's not a reference to Thor comics, but instead, Norse mythology in general, given how Norway is the birthplace of Scandinavian culture and Vikings, and also Norse mythology in general. So yeah, I don't think it's coincidence that they found Odin, the Allfather, on Norway, the birthplace of Scandinavian culture. The scene between Thor, Loki, and Odin is one of my favorites in the movie, and you just see the kind of relationship these three have. Despite all the fighting and politics, they are family, and they do care for one another. It's a very melancholy scene, and just shows just how much wisdom Odin has, and just the gap between him and his sons is really, really great. Odin even tells Loki that he is proud of him, words Loki never thought Odin would say. And shows that despite the path that Loki has chosen, he will always be Odin's son. Even if he is a frost giant, Odin considers him one of his own. It was a fitting end for Odin, and a great way to have Anthony Hopkins leave the Marvel Universe. And before some of you start crying out, oh my god, spoiler alert, spoiler alert! This isn't a spoiler, we all knew Anthony Hopkins was gonna leave the Marvel Universe. With Odin's death comes destruction, since he was the one sealing away Hela, Aku's daughter. Okay, I can't be the only one who thought that. Next we're gonna have Samurai Jack coming in to slay Surtur and team up with Thor. Hey, Odin did power up Samurai Jack's sword, so it all makes sense. Alright. Let's get back on track before this video gets too long. What I didn't like though is that after Odin dies, Hela just immediately appears. As in, will she appear wherever Odin dies? What if he died in a black hole? Will she just perish in the black hole along with him too? I know Odin sealed her away, but I was expecting more a dramatic entrance or some big grandeur thing, like her breaking out of some sealed container or something. Not just, bam, teleporting out of a wormhole, I'm here. And also, she draws her strength from Asgard, so conveniently, she appears away from Asgard, I don't know if that was to draw up conflict or just have her try to get to Asgard somehow so she can power up, but that really, I just didn't like that. But as for Hela herself, Cate Blanchett kills it as Hela. Get it? Kills it? Because she's the goddess of death? I'm here all week. But no, seriously, Cate Blanchett does an amazing job as Hela. Like, she makes herself a genuine threat, destroying Mjolnir and also taking on two Asgardian gods, Thor and Loki, with ease, tossing them aside like ragdolls. I think her scenes were the ones that were the most serious in the movies and had very little humor injected to it. Or if there was humor, it was more circumstantial and not intentional humor. This was probably done to make her more of a threat, but it falls short. Aside from killing a few Asgardian soldiers, the goddess of death is left stranded on Asgard, all because she needs the sword to open the Bifrost, and the sword is missing. What also bothered me though was her motivation. It felt beneath her. She wanted Asgard to be the ruler of all the 9 realms, with her as the queen. To me, I think that's beneath someone with the title Goddess of Death. I thought Hela would want more destruction and chaos, or be the one to fulfill Ragnarok. And it sucks because Cate Blanchett really made her into an awesome character, but was cast aside in favor of the more comedic tone. Where if the movie truly focused on Sakaar and the Grand Master, it would have made for a much better film. This is where the heart and soul of the movie is, and what fans were looking forward to the most. The fight between Thor, God of Thunder, and the Incredible Hulk. After his first confrontation with Hela, Thor lands on Sakaar, and is taken straight into the arena, where they waste little time in setting up the big fight. But in between that time, comic book readers are treated to some nice treats, with the appearances of Korg and Mike, 2 characters from the Planet Hulk storyline, who were prominent characters in the comic and are here as well in Ragnarok, albeit with some differences. In Ragnarok, Korg is really laid back and makes jokes, and wants to start a revolution like he does in the comics, but is more mild about it, while in the comics, he's more serious and commanding leader. But I won't lie, the Ragnarok Korg is the one I like best. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. The big superhero fight between Thor and Hulk. As I've said before, they barely waste any time getting to it, which was good and bad. Mostly because if Thor had to work his way up the ranks, they could have included some nice cameos of other characters, like Beta Ray Bill, maybe even a Nova Corp fighter, or anyone else. Something, just give us a tease, man. Opportunity lost if you ask me. In the title fight, no punches were pulled, literally. It lived up to the big, huge spectacle fans expected, and more. Really great action, and we got a taste of Thor's true power. Thor also had to get creative in this fight, as sheer strength is not enough to beat the Hulk. Both heroes seem to have some steam to blow off. Thor probably wants revenge for that one time the Hulk just punched him in the first Avengers movie. And they also probably want to see who is the most mightiest and strongest Avenger. I won't spoil the ending of the fight though. That's something for you guys to see and decide who is the real winner here. But we get another nice Easter egg with the name Contest of Champions, which is a nice nod to the 1982 limited series, Marvel's Contest of Champions, which actually pitted the Grand Master against the personification of death. Ragnarok also introduces Valkyrie and the Grand Master. First, I really enjoyed Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. You can see that she carries pain with her, and yes, she is Asgardian and knows of Thor and his family. Valkyrie also uses another name in the movie, Scrapper 142, which is a reference to the Incredible Hulk issue 142, where the Hulk first meets Valkyrie. One of the highlights between the relationship of Thor and Valkyrie was seeing Thor be such a fanboy about the Valkyries and how he wanted to be one when he was younger, only to discover that the Valkyries are an all-women squad. Thor and Valkyrie also seem to develop a warrior's bond as the movie progresses as well. Maybe a reference to the relationship they had in the comics? Who knows? As for the Grand Master was basically Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. But that's not a bad thing. His eccentric behavior and narcissistic attitude are traits that I believe an Elder of the Universe will have. But I wish they did more with him though, or at least establish a solid connection that the Collector is his brother. Again, another good character, just short-handed. The visuals and the musical score are two of my favorite things about this movie, with the visuals drawing heavy inspiration from legendary artist Jack Kirby. You notice it in the poster design and the art direction the film has, with the previous Thor posters being very somber and gloomy, while the Ragnarok posters are very vibrant and full of color. As for the musical score, it seemed to be heavily inspired by the 80s upbeat and use of the synthesizer. It would go from an upbeat, happy pace to a very low, gloomy, and slow, with rhythmic beating, making it really gloomy. It reminded me of Daft Punk a lot, and me being a huge fan of Daft Punk, I definitely downloaded this album. Story-wise, Thor Ragnarok draws from multiple sources, with some of the biggest influences being Walter Simonson's run on Thor, as well as the Mighty Thor issues 126 through 179, and the 2004 miniseries Thor Ragnarok from the Avengers Disassembled event. The most noticeable storyline though has to be Planet Hulk. Ragnarok though makes changes to Planet Hulk. The Marvel Illuminati is obviously not used, and Hulk crash lands on Sakaar instead of being sent away. The Red King, who is the main antagonist in Planet Hulk, is scrapped, and instead the Grand Master is used. Also, Hulk doesn't start the revolution here like he does in the comics. Instead, it is the lovely Korg. Mjolnir being destroyed is also taken from the comics, and it happened quite a few times actually. But the most notable one that I want to mention is when Loki did it in the 2004 Avengers Disassembled storyline. In previous reviews, I have stated that costuming is a huge aspect to superhero films, and I really love the designs that they use in Thor, with Thor and Loki remaining the same except with a few minor tweaks. But Hulk gets a huge upgrade with gladiator armor that is directly taken from the comics. Valkyrie's armor is pristine and heavenly, suitable for a warrior who rides a winged horse. The Grandmaster though looks like an 80s cartoon villain from the Thundercats, or maybe even He-Man. Marvel did an amazing job with Hela though. I really dig the black and green and how her hair transforms into the trademark horns, but she really does look like the daughters of Aku with the horns. I mean, come on. You guys see it, right? Not just me. Overall, Thor Ragnarok is a fun film and I did enjoy it. But I think the whole comedy direction they went with severely downplays Ragnarok. It's supposed to be the end. And I feel the movie never really made me feel like anyone was ever in danger or that the end of the world was really coming. Hela was terribly underused. They had a chance to make her a frightening villain, but it never amounted to much, with her highlight being the destruction of Mjolnir. It really sucks because you got Cate Blanchett to just hang around in Asgard. I'm hoping she does appear in Infinity War as Death, given that she is the goddess of death and the connection Thanos and Death have. Also, the humor in Thor works best when it's not intentional. I feel that's what the first two Thor and Avengers movies got right. He's funny not because he's trying to be, but because he's from a different world and culture who doesn't understand the modern times. And again, the comedy downplays the whole Ragnarok event. If the movie solely focused on Sakaar, it would have made for a much better movie. Seems like the director was split between two storylines and didn't exactly know how to bring it all to an end. Sakaar was supposed to be the subplot, while the threat of Hela the main plot, but watching the movie seems like it was reversed. I love Thor. He's one of my favorite Avengers after Captain America, and while I did enjoy the movie, I'm a bit disappointed it didn't fully take advantage or justify Hela and Ragnarok. I feel like this movie is a 7, but it was enjoyable and I love Thor, so in the end it gets an 8 out of 10. Enjoyable film, just underused villain again. Thanks for watching another Geek Night review. Do you agree with my score or disagree? Let me know in the comments or any other thoughts you have on Thor Ragnarok. Until next time guys.